Hey, you! Yes, you! Haven't subscribed to me yet, are you? Well, you better subscribe. Want to know why? Because I'm cool. Did you know yet that we have this? Well, now that you knows, come not support me using these to feature. But of course, only if you want to. If you cannot, or don't want to, subscribing to me is also okay and appreciated moi. This is the things you can get by joining the membership. I'm not forcing anyone, and I hope you guys can considering about joining or not. Tilda. Thank you for all the supports. Love you guys, Chocoloves.
No chance concealing what deep down I felt for you. Oh, I regret for losing the one who loved me, for who I can't go back to. Walking through all the dust, memories and frame a past we simply let fade. Oh, but I don't close the door, waiting a chance for when we'll be back again. You make me feel so crazy, still in love with you. You make me feel amazing when I'm next to you. You make me feel so crazy, my heart breaks for you. Can't help but know that I'm still in love with you. You make me feel so.
My mother was exactly like me when she was a child.
Tung 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 sahur. Anomali mengerikan yang hanya keluar pada sahur. Konon katanya kalau ada orang yang dipanggil sahur 3 kali dan tidak nyaut,
Let's talk about Sarebu Lishi. Sarebu Lishi is the husband of Dazuki Lishi and the father of Ryoba Oishi. He was a cheerful and energetic young man. He was kidnapped by Kataba Lishi and psychologically tortured by Dazuki Lishi until his psyche was completely shattered. This process turned him into an empty shell of a human being. He no longer exhibits a personality or shows any signs of independent thought. To explain his state of being, Dazuki told his parents and acquaintances that he had sustained a brain injury that had left him in a nearly vegetative state shortly after their wedding. She claims to be his caretaker, but in reality, she only does the bare minimum to sustain his existence, thinking of him more like a pet than a human being. He has never held a job, as his wealthy mother-in-law provides for him and his wife. When his mother-in-law eventually passes away, he will become her replacement and will care for his wife in the same way that her mother-in-law has been doing. His daughter, Ryoba, feels immense pity for him because she would never wish to be married to someone who exists in such a tragic state. She swore from a young age that she would never mind break her own senpai, as her mother did. Ryoba, like most women in the Ilishi bloodline, inherited the hair color of her mother. However, Ryoba's sister inherited the hair color of her father. Let's talk about Dazuki Lishi. Her backstory was released on the official Yandere Simulator website, so let's talk about it. Dazuki Lishi was born in 1950 to a pair of extremely wealthy parents. Dazuki's mother worked a highly demanding job that required her to frequently travel overseas for long periods of time, which caused her to be absent for most of Dazuki's childhood. Dazuki's mother tried to compensate for her lengthy absences by spoiling her daughter as much as possible whenever she had the opportunity. She showered Dazuki with gifts and praise as often as possible, and never said no to anything that her daughter requested. As a result, Dazuki developed into a very spoiled young woman who was accustomed to having everything she wanted handed to her on a silver platter without ever working for it. Like all other members of her bloodline, Dazuki is afflicted with the Aishi condition. In 1977, while attending high school, Dazuki came into physical contact with a young man whose presence could mysteriously alleviate the symptoms of her condition. Dubbing this young man her senpai, Dazuki was determined to turn him into her lifelong companion. However, there were other girls vying for his attention, and Dazuki had no experience with romance. It appeared as though wooing this young man would require hard work, which Dazuki was firmly opposed to. As usual, Dazuki went crying to her mother and begged her for a solution. By this point in time, Dazuki's mother had retired from her highly demanding job and could afford to spend all of her time and vast fortune doting on her daughter. She decided that the most efficient way to fulfill Dazuki's needs was to kidnap her senpai, break his spirit, and turn him into a sort of pet. After considering all of her options, she reached the conclusion that the only way to accomplish her goal in complete secrecy would require an addition to her house, a basement. In Japan, homes typically do not have basements due to earthquake concerns, flooding risks, and cultural preferences. Dazuki did not wish for local authorities to be aware that she was adding a basement to her home, since it would only be used for illegal purposes and could be a liability for her in the event of a police investigation, and so it was constructed in complete secrecy with the assistance of foreigners who were paid handsomely to stay silent about what they were building. Despite the numerous difficulties in accomplishing this task, the basement was constructed within a year's time. Immediately after its completion, Dazuki's senpai was kidnapped and imprisoned there. With her mind-broken husband at her side, Dazuki's easy life continued as before. She lived as selfishly as possible, relied on her doting mother for all of her needs, and never worked a day in her life. In 1971, she gave birth to her first daughter, Ryoba. Dazuki had absolutely no interest in child-rearing, and let her mother and husband raise the child, while doing only the bare minimum amount of work that was required of her. In 1976, she gave birth for the second and last time. Ryoba, who resented her mother for being lazy and selfish, and did not want to see her grandmother's workload increase, took it upon herself to care for her younger sister. For many years, Dazuki, her mother, her father, her husband, and her two daughters all lived under the same roof. However, once Ryoba found her own senpai and eventually brought him into their home, Dazuki decided that the house had become too crowded and that it was time for a change. She, along with her parents, husband, and daughter, moved out of Baraza town, leaving Ryoba and her senpai alone together in their old house. Now residing in Tokyo, Dazuki continues to live comfortably and selfishly, with her elderly mother still taking care of all her needs. And that's it. Bye.
Thank you.